guys, welcome to episode 3 of our modern video series where we pick a deck in the format and run it through some matches on Magic Online. This week we're playing Patrick Chapin's Temur Prowess list from GP Oklahoma City. A few weeks ago, middle of September I think, Pat got 64th with this brand new deck, hasn't got a lot of attention, so I figured while we were waiting for Battle for Zendikar to hit the online shelves, we could take it for a spin. As always, this video series is sponsored by Modern Nexus and Card Hoarder. Modern Nexus hosts these videos on their website, modernnexus.com, and also on their YouTube page. So wherever you're watching this video, make sure to check out the other half. And Card Hoarder donates cards to help us build all of the different decks we get to play. So check out their site at cardhoarder.com for MTGO singles and isleofcards.com for paper cards. So that being said, let's jump into the deck tech. Alright, first things first, we'll go over some of the numbers, and then after that we'll start explaining some interactions and some finer points that might not be apparent on the surface. One thing I've found from playing this deck for, I think I've got about 10 matches in with it, just some practice rounds before we started the video, is that while it looks and it's kind of constructed similar to a Delver deck, it's definitely a lot different. So that's something we'll talk about in the video. Mainly, we're looking to play a lot of creatures that are individually powerful and can take advantage of effects like Mishra's Bauble and Seal of Fire and these one-ofs that might not necessarily be instants or sorceries to help us flip our Delver. Just the fact that we have Tarmogoyf in our deck means that we're looking for kind of like a wide array of card types to help grow our Goyf. And in this deck, Goyfs being 6/7s or 7/8s is not unlikely, with Mishra's Bauble providing artifacts and Rancor / Seal of Fire providing enchantments. Our Goyfs can get pretty big pretty quick, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. For the 1-drops, 4 Monastery Swiftspear and a Grim Lavamancer. We'll talk about the Grim Lavamancer a little bit later. We also have 4 Abbot of Keep, 4 Tarmogoyf, and 4 Snapcaster Mage. So this deck is built around the premise of Abbot of Keep being great, which, lucky for the deck, Abbot of Keep is great. For those that watched our Jund video series, that deck had a 1 of Abbot in it, and it was awesome every time we drew it. This deck is looking to take advantage of Abbot more, kind of using it as like a main strategy. This is like the focus of the deck is to make Abbot of Keep good. And I will say that after playing with this deck, Abbot is awesome. We've talked a lot already about what it can do for you. I guess we can go over it again a little bit here. With, I don't know how many 1-drops we have. Let's just count real quick. 4, 8, 12, 13, 15 2-drops. So that means 45 or 3/4 of the cards in our deck we can play off of an Abbot on turn 3. If we either have a land in hand or don't have another land in hand, you just, on your turn 3, you play your Abbot before playing a land, and then 3/4 of your deck is a hit from that point. And this deck can take advantage of the prowess ability of Abbot to just, alongside Monastery Swiftspear and large Tarmogoyf, start hitting really hard, really quick, with 8 free spells in Jataxian Probe and Mishra's Bauble. It's not unlikely that we're attacking with 4/3 and 5/4 Abbots on some turns. Tarmogoyf is not even really a green creature. He's pretty much a blue creature, as has been said before. It's just a huge, fast, hard-hitting threat that we can play for 2 mana. He's great. Snapcaster Mage is awesome alongside all of these cheap spells. Vapor Snag, Snapcaster targeting Vapor Snag is still awesome, even though it's not really seen that much in Modern anymore. Remands are great once we can set up a board presence and just start hitting our opponents and keeping their side of the board clear while we knock them down. The Rancor and the Seal of Fire are both, I guess, would look kind of odd, but they're really interesting, and they give a lot of play to the deck. Seal of Fire is awesome to just like get a spell or like cast a spell to trigger Prowess, but not necessarily be sending lightning bolts to the face. So like with Swiftspear or Abbot on the field, you just cast Seal of Fire, get a Prowess trigger, and then it's there for when you need it. This card's great against Infect, it's great against Burn. It lets us, I guess, like growing Swiss Spears and Abbot of Kiro Keeps out of the range of like, Lingering Souls tokens blocking, or there's been scenarios where like I played a Seal of Fire and was able to attack my Swiss Spear into a Spellskite, and they couldn't block because then the Seal of Fire can just kill the Spellskite with the Prowess trigger, making it a 2/3. So you just get to accrue like this incidental free damage just by Seal of Fire sitting on the table, making your, I guess, individually weak creatures threaten to trade with stronger things. Seal of Fire is great for like, Tarmogoyf mirrors, I guess, where, our Tarmogoyf bounces off of theirs. Seal of Fire can finish it up. And above all, it's an enchantment that helps grow our Tarmogoyf, so it's pretty sweet. The Rancor is just another enchantment, and it's actually great alongside like our individually, I wouldn't say weak creatures, but like Rancor on a Swiss Spear or Rancor on an Abbot of Kiro Keep can let these creatures trade up, and then we can get more use out of this spell and turn it into extra damage later on. A lot of times Rancor functions as like a lightning or a lava spike that we get to buy back. So yeah, it's pretty good. The Izzet Charm I'm not sold on. I always Patrick has one in this deck, and I always end up with an Izzet Charm as a one of and a bunch of different decks that I play that are blue and red, and it's just like, it's never great. It doesn't do anything well, but it does a bunch of different things, I guess, acceptable. You're not really happy to pay 2 mana to shock a creature. You're not really happy to pay 2 mana to Spell Pierce, and you're not really happy to pay 2 mana to draw 2, discard 2, because you're not even at that point. You're down in card quality, or I guess card advantage. But as for like an all-around spell that I guess can dig you out of some situations, it's pretty good. Even with 18 land, with 4 Jataxian Probes and 4 Serum Visions and the 4 Mishra's Baubles, we do tend to flood out sometimes. So holding like your 4th or 5th land to trade it away with Izzet Charm in search for something better is a pretty I guess common play, and I guess that's one thing that makes Izzet Charm good, but I don't know. It's always the first card I cut when I go to sideboarding, and I know it shouldn't be that way, but I don't know. Grim Lavamancer is sweet. We get to fill up our graveyard pretty quickly, and we're not really playing any like delve spells like Become Immense, or like if we were playing black, we'd have Tassiger. So our graveyard ends up being full with nothing to really use it for. We do have Snapcaster Mage to buy back spells. So Grim Lavamancer being able to use our graveyard as a resource and start getting extra damage out of one spell or killing a creature to let our big guys attack through. Grim Lavamancer has been pretty good. The matchups where Lavamancer is good, it's great. And the matchups where Lavamancer is unimpressive, I guess we could just cut him. But he's fine as a one-of. There is the sort of non-bow where, like, exiling our Grim Lavamancer, exiling cards from our graveyard with Grim Lavamancer can shrink our Tarmogoyf, but it's really not that big of an issue. Both of the cards are individually powerful, and you can always, just attack for one, or there's normally, like, extra copies of fetch lands or multiple instants that it doesn't really hurt us that much. I don't know if we talked about Mishra's Bauble. Mishra's Bauble is one of those awkward cards that you can find ways to get some value out of it. Like turn 1, if you have a Jataxian Probe in hand, you can Mishra's Bauble before playing your land. Say you have a fetch land in hand, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a card that you want to keep, you can draw it immediately with Jataxian Probe and then fetch after that and continue on with your life. Or if it's something that you don't want, you'll fetch first and then Jataxian Probe after. So the small little interactions with Mishra's Bauble, you can find ways to I guess stretch what it can provide for you, and with a deck like this that I guess, like, I don't know the way to say it, but like an inch is a mile, and being able to use your Mishra's Bauble, extract full value out of it, I've found goes a long way towards helping us win. As for the mana base, we have 4, 8, 9, 10 fetch lands, Playset of Tarn and Rainforest, and then a Polluted Delta and a Wooded Foothills. The one thing I'm not sure about the mana base so far is I feel like it wants a basic forest, just because Steam Vents is, in my opinion, the best duel to play on turn 1, because it casts pretty much everything in our deck except for Tarmogoyf. So then, turn 2 we can just fetch a basic forest, and we don't need to shock ourselves from that point on and cast Tarmogoyf. The one issue with that is forest doesn't cast anything else in our deck. So now we're in this weird situation where like Breeding Pool becomes the best land in our deck because it casts all these blue spells plus Tarmogoyf, and then we're fetching Mountain, which I guess seems fine, but I don't know, it just seems kind of awkward. Maybe, I know in Chapin's article he talks about originally having a forest and then just turning it into a Copperline Gorge instead, which I guess is fine, but that means you can't fetch it up with our 5 sources that fetch the forest. I don't know what's correct. I've been playing a lot with it and thinking a lot about my lands, and sometimes I want to get the forest, sometimes I don't. Breeding Pool, we're usually looking to cast Serum Visions on turn 1, so we could just like Breeding Pool into Mountain from there, and that's like a normal scenario. But it'd be interesting to see whether we end up wanting the forest or not. So I think that's it for the main deck. Let's move on to the sideboard. Dispel is, in my opinion, the best blue card in Modern right now. The card's great. Counters, what does it counter? It's great against Burn, it's great against other counterspell decks. It's awesome against Collected Company, Path to Exile. You could go on and on, but right now everybody's trying to squeeze removal into their decks to deal with all the Delve creatures that are running around out of Grixis Twin and Grixis Control. Collected Company is hot, and so basically decks that wouldn't normally have good Dispel targets end up just playing these cards that you can just counter for 1 mana, and it's pretty backbreaking. Yeah, Dispel is great, and I would like to play 4, but I've been liking the Negate a lot as well, so I think 3 is fine. But yeah, the Dispel is awesome. Definitely, if you have the room in your sideboard, don't skimp on Dispels. That's great. Negate is a little more expensive, but it's got a little bit more versatility. Counters Splinter Twin, counters Cape Shift, counters Liliana of the Veil. What else does it counter? Basically does everything Dispel does, but a little bit more. One thing about Burn is that a lot of times if they're smart and they're worried about Dispel, they'll play their instants first, leaving Lava Spikes and Rift Bolts until later. They'll just turn 1. Not against this deck, they wouldn't turn 1 Bolt, but against while I've been playing Grixis Control, I've seen a lot of Burn players just use their instants first and save their sorceries until later, just because they're worried about Dispel. And Negate doesn't care. Negate counters all of that. Planeswalkers, Blood Moon, we don't care about Blood Moon, but random enchantments and stuff like that. Negate's been pretty sweet. It definitely wouldn't be the 3rd Deprive. Deprive is awesome as well, but you can really only afford to play 2. Casting 1 Deprive, and then the one thing about Deprive is you can't unless it's very late in the game, you can't Deprive and then Snapcaster it back later. That normally just puts you too far behind on lands, and you can't. I guess you could Deprive twice, but then you're pretty far behind as well. So trying to diversify the counter spells a little bit is great. I think the 2 remand in the board is enough remand that I wouldn't want to go 3 or even play a Mana Leak. I've been happy with the Deprive Negate Dispel split. But I think that's it for the counter spells. Moving on, Seal of Fire, great for Burn, Infect, every deck that plays small creatures. Collected Company, Elves. What else am I missing? It's even, just great for those matchups where we're trying to race or we want a little bit more damage. It's another removal spell that can just act as a shock and help us grow our Goyf and trigger Prowess. In this deck, Seal of Fire is often doing more than 2 damage. So when you're going into sideboarding, don't look at the Seal of Fire and just be like, oh, it's just a 2 damage spell. It's not really going to help me that much. It's against control and decks that aren't playing many creatures. Cutting Vapor Snag for Seal of Fire is fine. This card will often do 3 or 4 damage for 1 mana, which is pretty good. Ancient Grudge for Affinity and Tron, I guess. I don't know. I think in the article, Chapin talks about Tron being matchup that he lost to, but one that he didn't really think he should be losing to. I haven't had to face it yet online, so I don't know how the matchup goes, but it seems like being able to, present a quick clock and then, back that up with counter spells, having Vapor Snags for their Wormcoil engines in game 1, and then after board having access to more counter spells, seems like the matchup would be fine, just because they have things like Pyroclasm, which doesn't deal with Tarmogoyf. But it'd be interesting to see how the matchup plays out. We have access to Blood Moon and we're not playing it because I don't think we need it. But yeah, it'd definitely be interesting to see how the Tron matchup goes, whether we need Tron hate in the sideboard or whether we're just positioned good enough against it game 1 that it doesn't matter. Or not game 1, but like in the matchup. Roast is good against Tasigur and Gurmag Angler, and that is why it is here. It's also fine against just as like a slightly more expensive removal spell against the decks where you just want a mass amount of creature kill. But it's mainly in here for Tasigur and Gurmag Angler, which this is a sign. Just I guess Vapor Snags are awesome as well, to where we're not really worried about those delve creatures out of this deck. But yeah, just having a Roast that can hit a Deceiver Exarch and opposing Tarmogoyfs and Siege Rhinos, which haven't really been showing up that much lately, but all of the large toughness creatures running around, Roast is pretty common to see now. Volcanic Fallout I haven't really needed yet, but that's just because the Collected Company decks have kind of been dying down. But if that's popular in your meta or area, or you expect it to be big at your tournament, Volcanic Fallout is pretty good. The only unless we have a Snapcaster on the field, we're only losing Abbott when we cast Volcanic Fallout, and it's often enough that we can like Jataxian Probe and then Volcanic Fallout, and our Abbott lives through the Prowess triggers. Monastery Swiftspear is a 1/2 that will live through Fallout, so it's pretty cool that we're playing these, quote unquote small creatures, but they still live through our, like low damage sweepers. So yeah, Fallout is a blowout. Feed the Clan is sweet. I kind of want to. The Burn matchup seems fine, but like Burn is really popular online. I would, kind of just like having access to 2, maybe over the Roast. But yeah, Feed the Clan is great. We don't often get to Ferocious it, but just being able to cast it at instant speed and Snapcaster it back. 5 life is normally good enough when we're racing them with a Tarmogoyf or an Abbot of Carrow Keep. Yeah, Feed the Clan is great. You don't need the second copy against Burn. Like I said, I think the Burn matchup is fine. We already have access to 3 Dispel, a Negate, a Feed the Clan, 2 Spellskite, Seal of Fire. Maybe we bring in some Deprive from there, but I've been leaving them on the board. So you don't really need it. We're already bringing in a bunch against Burn. But if you're expecting a lot of Burn, if you're worried about your Burn matchup, Feed the Clan is great in the deck, even though we're not triggering Ferocious that often. We can still do it. Well, like one other spell plus Feed the Clan with an Abbot on the field gets us our Ferocious, and 10 life should be lights out. But is a Staticaster another thing that's great against Infect, Lingering Souls, random elf decks. The white decks have a lot of X1 creatures, and the white decks I seem to run into fairly regularly online. But yeah, Staticaster is sweet, pretty good. I don't know what else to say. And 2 Spellskites, all around awesome card, can go in the sideboard of any deck, but we actually have blue mana that we can use to make it just lights out against Burn. Yeah, it's great. Everybody knows what Spellskite does and what it can do in each matchup, but it is pretty good when we are trying to play these, when we have these dinky creatures that die to bolt. Spellskite can eat a bolt, which is pretty good. Makes our Grim Lavamancer better, because the longer that guy stays on the field, the better games normally go for us. But yeah, so trying to think of other sideboard options that we could play. I haven't really started exploring that much yet, just because I want to play Chapin's List first and see how it goes before we think about moving on. We talked about Blood Moon, how we probably won't need it. I don't know what else I'm blanking on, like something else that we might be interested in playing, but aren't. To be honest, I kind of have been wanting Gutshot. It goes with the deck, and it can be a blowout sometimes. I've been seeing a lot of Gutshot pictures on Twitter, and there are a lot of situations where just like, Gutshot your Noble Hierarch, Gutshot your Bird, Gutshot your, Infect creature or something else, and could be a big deal. It combines with a Lightning Bolt to kill a Deceiver Exarch. Gutshot seems fine, and if there was ever a deck that would take advantage of the tempo that it generates, and just being able to cast another spell to trigger Prowess for free, I don't know, maybe we cut a Seal of Fire or the Roast for a Gutshot, but I just want to get them, Other than that, we mentioned that this deck isn't really a Delver deck, but we didn't really talk about it. One thing is that things like Mishra's Bauble and Rancor and Seal of Fire, they're good for our Tarmogoyf, but they don't trigger our Delver. Delver is a card that's great if you can flip it, but it's pretty bad if it doesn't flip. I think if we were playing Delver, we would want to play Young Pyromancer, and then we're probably not playing Abbot of Carrow Keep, but just playing Abbot and getting 8 free things to hit off of it, to where like Abbot's a perfectly fine turn 2 play. I think we're trying to do something a little bit different. We're attacking from a little bit different angle, and we're not so all in, I guess, to where, to the point to where Delver can be just kind of an all-in deck. I think Delver is great in a deck that plays, Delve creatures, like Grixis Delver that gets to splash black for Kolaghan's Command and Tasigur, which is something we could do too if we didn't want to play Tarmogoyf, but I like the direction that Pat took it. The mana seems fine, Tarmogoyf seems great with the strategy of the deck, and you get to play the one of Rancor and make people angry. So we'll try it like this. So we'll be back for round 1.